My name is Debbie Beaver, and I am let me see, fourth generation Canadian. My grandparents were both born in the United States. My parents were born and raised in Alberta, and my dad was raised in a community called Campsie. My mom was raised in a community in Maidstone, Saskatchewan. I was raised in a small farming community close to Campsie, called Tiger Lily, in a farming community.
So, Debbie, tell me about Campsie and Tiger Lily. Why is it so special?
I don't know. We were raised there. That was our lives. I mean, that's all I know. And I think, in many ways, we had maybe a better life than some of the people that were raised in the city, because were being on a farm. You were self-sufficient in many ways. I mean, not saying you didn't deal with your neighbors, but we had our own meat, our own chickens, our own garden. Um, I mean, we went to school and to church and stuff, but we were still self-sufficient in many ways. And I don't know, we enjoyed our lives on the farm.
And what do you think Campsie should mean and Tiger Lily should mean to Canadians across the country?
I mean, it's just Campsie it was one of the settlements that some of the original Black settlers came to and homesteaded. And since we were the only family, well, we were the only ones that stayed. There was other people that came, and but most of them left and moved to the city for various reasons. But there was only us and one other family that actually stayed out there. And for my dad, that was he was born and raised and died in the same community. He lived out there for 80, 85, 87 years. That's where he was born, raised, and it was just an interesting, I guess if you don't know any different, I think we had a good life. And doing some of the research that I've done and talking to some of the people, I know even as compared to some of our relatives and things, we, this is because we were self-sufficient and stuff. It was peaceful and we worked hard. But
I'm curious, people don't know across Canada what's a homestead. So what's a homestead to you? And like, did your grandfather build it? Did your dad improve on it? Like, what's a homestead and how did it grow in Campsie and in Tiger Lily?
well, my great grandfather, apparently, he was able to secure two homesteads. And at that time, a homestead was, I believe, a quarter section of land. So 160 acres. So somehow my great grandfather was able to secure two of those. So, and at that time it was $10, I believe, to get the homestead. And when he came, his son, which is my grandfather Walker was already 9 or 10 years old when he came. So the farm that I was raised on was actually one of the homesteads. Then when my dad got old enough to farm, he took over the homestead. And then my grandfather, he took over the other one.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, Alberta is not the warmest place. So building a homestead and sustaining there for 87 years is quite amazing.
Well, yeah, and my grandfather, yeah, and even my grandfather, as I said, he came when he was 9, and he passed away. He was in his 80s, about 85 or so. So he lived all his life out there. Now, my great grandfather, he didn't stay out there. I can't tell you what year he would have left, but and I just off the top of my head, I can't remember what year he passed away. But he had a daughter, um, his youngest daughter, Auntie Mary, and when Auntie Mary, I don't know if we talked about this, but great grandfather, he came out to this, got these homesteads. His wife came with him, but she didn't like it here. So she boarded the train and took their young daughter, who was about 3, that's my Auntie Mary, and headed back to the States. Unfortunately, she passed away on that journey in somewhere in Manitoba, so close to the border in Manitoba. So I guess Auntie Mary was old enough; she knew her name and everything. So the authorities contacted, would have been her father, which was be my great grandfather, and he came and to Manitoba, picked up Auntie Mary, and continued and took him down to the States to live with relatives down there. So she ended up living with, it would be my uh he had another son that lived down there, but they were older. So they raised Auntie Mary until she was about, oh, I don't know, 12 or something. And then they were old, so they ended up that my grandfather, which would have been her brother, because there was quite an age difference, she ended up coming and living with him. So she was raised with her uncle, with her uncle and aunts, which would be my dad and his sisters. But she was really close in age to them. So she was raised, and then when Mary got to be about a teenager, she left. She got a job and she was working, I don't know, odd jobs like housekeeping and stuff. But then she got a job and she moved to BC. And once she moved to BC, Grandpa moved there, and that's where he passed away. And he's buried out there.
Wow, thank you. I've asked you this before. I've got to ask you again. Why do the clippings? Why keep everything? Why do that? Like, you shared so much with it, but for you, why keep all heritage? What purpose does it serve for you?
To be honest with you, I have no idea. I took this class, and I guess it's part of it is, well, I wouldn't even say it's memories, because some of the stuff I don't even know. I don't know. I know the people and things. Um, I guess I'm hoping that some of it will be recorded somewhere, because once I'm gone, once my sister's gone, a lot of that stuff is lost. Because even in our family, I mean, my brothers don't have any, very little interest, actually, a little bit of interest, but not enough to collect all that stuff and keep it. And I realize that once I'm gone, it'll, whatever, I don't know what'll happen to it. I know my son's not gonna be interested in any of it. So to be honest with you, why do I say that? I don't. It's I guess research material, and hopefully somebody will use it for something.
Well, we appreciate what you shared with us. Why don't you tell me the story about your grandmothers, your paternal and maternal grandmother? Because we have a picture of that beautiful quilt. Tell me the story of your grandmothers, how they met and how the quilt came about.
How it came about. Uh, well, I think it's my on my mom's side, my maternal grandmother. She was a widow early in life. My mom's father passed away when he was only about 49 years old. He wasn't very old. And I can't, honestly, I don't have the papers in front of me, so I can't tell you what year. And because back at that time, a lot of the women didn't have any, real skills, or like it's not like and she was living in Maidstone, Saskatchewan. So it's not like you could just go out and get a job doing whatever. Um, so after her husband died, she stayed living with her son, her oldest son, and he was farming there as much as he could, I guess. Maidstone wasn't good farmland, so I'm not 100% sure. So but I know that he was farming. Unfortunately, he was killed in a car accident. So she was living with him, and I guess he was supporting her in whatever way he could. But then once he died, um, she didn't. I don't know. I was younger. I remember. I can't say how old I was, but probably maybe 15 or something, because I do remember my dad down going down, taking the truck and going down and coming back with a load of stuff that he had brought back from the farm down there. So after he passed away, my grandmother, this is my maternal grandmother, she, as I said, she was living with her son. So she was in a way homeless, I guess you could call it. But so at that time, she just started staying with her children. So she would come to Edmonton and stay with my aunt in the city in Edmonton for a while. And then what my mom, we were on the farm, and there were 6 of us, and my mom had 3 kids in 3 years. So a lot of the times in the summer, my grandmother stayed on the farm with us when we weren't in school and stuff. And that's how, and so she took up the quilting. Or she sewed, she already sewed and stuff. So that, but she would do some cooking and stuff, but she would quilt a lot during the day. And that's how my sister learned how to quilt. And Christine would have been, she was young. But when you have a house and you got 6 kids, Christine stayed pretty close to Granny. And then my the paternal grandparents, they're the ones that lived at Campsie. So they lived about, well, I'm going to say miles because I don't know how many, but they lived about 7 miles. Well, you saw we went the distance, but they lived about 7 miles. So that's how the grandmothers got to know each other, because, as I said, my grandmother, maternal grandmother, would come and stay with us. And we did spend time going back and forth quite a bit to our paternal grandparents too. So over the years, they just developed this bond until my grandmother, maternal grandmother, she decided to move to live with her son and daughter in Vancouver. And I think that's about the time probably that quilt was made, was when Granny was, before she moved to Vancouver. Because once she moved to Vancouver, I don't recall her coming back to Edmonton at all. But we used to go there to visit her. But I don't recall her coming back to Edmonton. Because as I said, she had 2, her son and two of her sons and her daughter lived in Vancouver. So when she moved, she went and lived with my uncle and aunt. And she died in 1972, maybe. And I think my paternal grandmother died in 1970 or 71. Something like that.
So you mentioned Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, British Columbia. How do they all connect in the history and the homesteaders that have come up into Canada?
How do they connect?
Yeah, how do all the provinces connect? Like, how does it work for the families? Like, does it all connect those provinces?
Well, I mean, we had family. Well, when my mom was born in Saskatchewan, and I'm not even, and we still have relatives in all those provinces. Now, some of them we're not that close to, but my dad, his uncles were all, pretty much all of them were porters. They worked on the trains. And so so some of his uncles were in Winnipeg, some were in Calgary, some were in Vancouver. There was, I know one of the uncles lived in Edmonton, but he still ran out of Vancouver. But that's why they ended up living in places like Winnipeg, Vancouver, because they worked on the trains. So they moved to where they were working out of. Um, but they're all connected because back at that time of when my parents were coming up, the there wasn't so much of the interracial intermarriage. So a lot of the people, when they had their picnics and those kinds of things, that's how people met. So maybe there's people that lived in Breton that married somebody that was in Maidstone or in Athabasca, or because they would have social events and people would meet. And I know I have a cousin who's 82, and one of the things she said was that, she never dated anybody. She was raised in Athabasca. She said she never even dated anybody that was local, because she said you were related to almost everybody, in some way. Now, I don't know if I answered your question. I
You
think I
did.
went on.
No, that's okay. We appreciate those stories. I suppose the last question that we want to follow up on you is, how do you, why is this so important to Canadian history, what you're telling us?
I guess it's important. The way I see it is those black settlers, pioneers, they paved the way for the rest of for everybody else. They came, they lived in the bush, they cut down the trees, they lived peacefully, they were successful in just surviving. And then you have all these other immigrants that come, and because we were such a small group, we're almost forgotten. Everybody, you get people coming, they'll say, so where are you from? Or where are you from in Jamaica? Do I sound like I'm from Jamaica? I mean, so I think that for us, it's really important that people know that we've been here for more than 100 years, and I feel that we've paved the way.
I think with that, that's an excellent way to end. I want to thank you, Debbie, so much for the work that you did with us in Alberta, for taking us through your family history, also for trusting us with your family history. I mean, it was invaluable, the experience that we all had together. So I just want to take this time to really thank you for this. And we look forward to sharing the work we've done and honoring your ancestry as well.